Hello and welcome to the Business Learning Lounge. I'm delighted to be here with Andrea. Andrea is the CEO of the Shire of Augusta, Margaret River, previously the CEO of Carnarvon, the city of the town of Carnarvon, and really excited to be here talking to Andrea about leadership. Andrea is one of the leaders who I have a huge amount of respect for in the local government sector. She's navigated some very complex issues, and so we're going to have an opportunity to explore that with her this morning. Andrea, welcome and delighted to have you here to join us. Do you want to just give us a little bit about your background and how you came to be in the role of CEO?
Thanks, Lynda. And it's absolutely delightful to be here. So my background, I started my local government career as a 17-year-old, gap year, not sure what I wanted to do. I worked at the town of Bassendean, and I was absolutely inspired by what local government does at a grassroots level in community, and three women that I worked with, very powerful women. Jill McIntyre at the library, Val Johns as the child, she ran the childcare centre, and Gwen Fennick. I still remember their names, their surnames.
Yeah, wow.
After all these years, they made such an impact on me. She looked after community development, and these three women were just courageous. And so we're talking the 80s. So, they were leaders and very, they inspired me to further my study and stay in local government. And here I am so many years later.
Wow.
No longer a fresh-faced 17-year-old trainee, now as CEO. But obviously along that journey, I've moved from into management roles, and then given an incredible opportunity by Tony Brun at the City of Greater Geraldton to move into an executive role. And then when CEO opportunity came up, I was encouraged by my then CEO, Ken Diem, to look at taking on a CEO role.
Yeah. Actually, and your first one was on Cocos Islands.
My first one was in Darwin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was interesting. I'll tell you about my first day as a CEO. But maybe I made that sound a little easier than it actually was, Lynda, because sometimes stepping up into those leadership roles, it wasn't just given to me. It wasn't just, you are, here's a leadership role, step into it. I actually really aspired to it and worked hard to achieve those.
It took hard work. You didn't just kind of meander into it. Yeah.
And sometimes it was actually knocking on the CEO's door and saying, this is what I want.
Yeah.
How can you help me achieve that?
And traditionally, local government has been fairly male-dominated at the senior level. So to stand out as a female in the sector is challenging.
It has been, and sometimes you doubt yourself, I think, in that context. But yeah, I made sure that in whatever situation, my supervisor, so in the case of moving into an executive role, making sure that my CEO knew that I was keen to
that you were
that
and that you demonstrated that through additional study, hard work,
performance in the organisation. So I had a track record that I could show.
So tell us about your first day as a CEO.
I think I would have had one of the most unique first days as a CEO. I would challenge any CEO. I'd love to hear from anyone else who's had a more interesting first day. So I started at the Shire of Darwin on a Monday at whatever it was, 8 o'clock in the morning. And 10 o'clock in the morning, a special council meeting was held, and I was in the hot seat, and that was the meeting where the forensic audit was handed down around the previous CEO, who had stolen $600,000 out of the organisation, and basically council the forensic audit put it all on the table as to how that theft was facilitated, and the dismantling of internal controls that had happened. The council looked at me to, okay, what are you going to do to fix it?
How are you going to fix this?
So here's a problem. 2 hours into the role and 2 hours into a CEO gig, my first. So that was my first, and I had to hold it together and go, right, great, we've got a roadmap,
navigate
and we'll develop a plan to get us to where we need to be. And within 2.5 years, I was really proud of where we we were.
Where you got to,
definitely.
You've had a tendency to take on fairly dysfunctional local governments, because I know Cook's Island had some challenges before you went in, so did Carnarvon have some significant challenges with having had, I think it was about 5 or 6 CEOs in a very short span of time.
Yes.
What's your principles that you work to as a leader to walk in and make the changes that you need to do? How do you go about that?
So I think in each one it's quite unique. The external environment is quite unique, or the needs are quite unique. But what I take into the organisation, I think, stays much the same. So what I would take into the organisation, the principles of guiding, the principles that guide my the way I approach the role, stay the same, and they include empowering the people around me, staff, so empowering people, but at the same time expecting that they will perform. So accountability. So giving people the tools and the resources they need to do their jobs well, but making sure they understand that they will, they do need to perform. So getting that performance. And I suppose that's really important, because while the CEO certainly sets a direction and provides that guidance, the CEO can't do most of the work. 99% of the work is done by other people. So making sure those people can get on and do their jobs. So that's important, an important principle I take with me. And the other is around being we are a service industry. So local government serves the community. We serve our constituents. So being focused on service, while at the same time understanding serving the community doesn't mean reacting to everything everyone wants when they want it. Taking into consideration that decisions that are made by the local government have impacts on, on the whole community. And future
rather than a
communities.
faction in the community. And that's a hard balance, isn't it? It's a hard balance to keep people engaged in a community that has very differing views.
Yes, and then there are community groups that are very good at advocacy, so lobbying for their whatever it is they see as their priority. But sometimes there are, other considerations that by resolving an issue for a particular group, making sure there isn't a detrimental impact on anyone. So, look, it's always being cognizant of that and then trying to find the best path forward. But a couple of the other principles that I've applied, and this was particularly important on Kogas, is working with the issues, focusing on issues, resolving issues, and sometimes realising that in resolving an issue, you're not going to keep a group or an individual happy.
Yeah.
But not letting that destroy the relationship.
Yeah.
So keeping the issue and the relationship separate.
Yeah.
So focus on the issue, be firm, be clear, manage expectations, but realise even if you end up disagreeing on that particular issue, maintain the relationship.
Yeah, you've still got to invest in the relationship, even if you've got a disagreement on the topic or issue. Yeah.
So that's something else.
That's a really hard balance, isn't it? Because most people, when there's a disagreement, want to back off into their corner, and actually what you need to do is step forward as a leader and actually still build the relationship. So a really important aspect from your leadership style.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've always noticed with you in your various leadership roles, as we've touched points along the way, is that you bring a really authentic style to your leadership. Talk to me about that, because that's also, what you bring in really quickly into an organisation is authenticity, which is missing a lot in leadership. So how do you maintain that authenticity?
Well, I haven't really thought about that, Lynda. Let me give that a moment's thought. Well, I guess I only know how to be me. I don't know how to be anyone else.
Yeah.
And look, sometimes you do doubt yourself. So I do focus on. I'm sorry. Do you mind if I just start for it again? So I'm starting to think about how you actually bring that in. How do you demonstrate authenticity?
So talk about, your background. You're from a really normal background, and you don't try to be anything you're not. That would be good, because I like that. You're going into Margaret River where there are some very political players, but you will still be you. That's, for me, that's the authenticity that you bring.
Okay. All right.
So starting again?
Yeah. So being authentic, I can only be me. I only know how to be me. Sometimes you do doubt yourself as well, because, for example, you go into a community, and in some communities you're dealing with very powerful people who've sort of got, highly educated. And for me, coming from a fairly, my parents were migrants, so we came out to Australia when I was 11 years old. We left India. Interesting, in India you can't take any money out of the country. You can take as much money as you need to get to
where you're going.
Yeah, that was it at that time. I don't know, it might have changed by now. But so started again, and my parents as migrants had a very strong work ethic. Worked hard. And we lived in a very modest house in a very modest suburb. I went to a state school, and I think that has just given me
formed who you are.
That grounding for being who I am, and taking that. Giving that to the organisation. I can't give anything else.
And that, that's certainly, as I've watched your career over the years, that's what you enter with. I am who I am. I'll work with you and we'll work together. So that's a really key aspect of of what I see in your leadership.
Thanks, Lynda. And I've just thought of something. I guess being authentic is easier than trying to be. It's just you don't have to work at it.
Yeah.
It's
you don't have to pretend to be something you're not.
It's actually easier just to be who you are from day one. And I actually asked my leadership team in Carnarvon for some advice. I said, look, I'm going in as a new CEO, and some advice I've had from external to the organisation was go in hard. Okay, another CEO actually go in hard and make your from day one,
make your mark.
Be tough. I went, oh, okay, that's not really what I do.
Yeah.
So I asked my leadership team in Carnarvon. I said, okay, so, I'm going to be going into a new organisation. Tell me, what advice would you give me about what you would be looking for from a new CEO? They reflected back on when I'd started in Carnarvon, and they actually said it was really good. I was clear about expectations. I was clear about who I was, and clear about what I thought the organisation needed. Yeah. And I held people to account.
Yeah.
To that.
Yeah.
But
so they didn't need you to come in hard.
No.
Yeah. No. And interesting, when we talk about leadership and all the research on leadership, the research on leadership actually says that we need to be transformational, which includes actually taking care of people, looking after, understanding what they need. I think we think that transformational means changing everything. And that's not actually the definition of transformational leadership. Includes the ability to really connect with people, the ability to influence people effectively rather than direct them, the ability to actually take people on a journey and empower them rather than tell them what to do. Interesting, the research is counter to the advice that you were given. Don't go in hard, actually connect with people, understand, empower people. That gets you better results. So interesting that that's the choices you make almost naturally.
Yes.
Do you think we started to ebb into this? There is a gender bias in CEOs in the sector, and we tend to see more of that directive leadership style from some of the longer serving leadership in the sector. Your style is very different to that. Yours is much more, hey, let's work together, let's be inclusive. How do you think that works? Feel free to tell us about some ways that you've seen it really work in your years as a CEO.
Oh, look, I absolutely believe, core to my being is that the only way to achieve success in local government, but probably across across all sectors, is to work with people, work with your team, because and the other thing is you can be directive and but then you have to be there all the time to direct. If you're not there to direct, then people are not going to either perform or know what to do. Or if they do know what to do, I find it really interesting that people would default to that style when it does then require constant direction. So
in the absence of the directive leader, it falls over.
So for me, empowering people, working with people, and having them want to be on the journey. Because if they don't want to be on the journey, then you're going to constantly be pushing someone
up the hill.
I'd rather we were supporting each other up along the journey or up the hill. So, so very much around that empowerment and working collaboratively, working together. I also, honestly believe that the best results, you get the best results, the more people who contribute their different perspectives and ideas and thoughts and passions and experiences, the better the result. Having said that, sometimes you do have to
take a captain's call. You
have to make a call and give direction. But on the whole, I'd say my style is
your style is. Yeah. And interesting, we're starting to see the Gen Zs coming into the workplace, and they are really not going to take that directive style. So the industry is going to battle to recruit the Gen Zs unless we really shift that style to a much more inclusive, engaging style of leadership. So it's going to be challenging for older school style of leadership to actually survive.
Absolutely. And it's going to be challenging because, on the other hand, it's also getting performance. So getting that right balance between empowering and, engaging and working with a team, but then also expecting, because our community pays
your way.
Service.
Yeah.
So making sure there is performance that goes with that, and getting that right mix.
And it's interesting again, when we talk about transformational leadership, the other aspect of transformational leadership is the transactional stuff that needs to get done. You've got to get the garbage collected, but you've also got to engage the community in looking forward. So local government is the ultimate of those two in combination. But reality is that if you're not doing the transformational stuff, you haven't got the community on your side.
Absolutely. And I suppose local government is evolving so much. So the transactional, where, maybe, I don't know, 20, probably even longer, 30 years ago, it was much more around transactional service, I guess. Transactional service delivery, whereas now there is an expectation for transformational, so empowering communities and
working with community organisations,
business building and supporting and facilitating business. So that getting that, but the bread and butter, the transactional still needs to happen.
The collecting of the bins, the basic disciplines of local government.
And I suppose how do you bring the transformational into the transactional? Because sometimes we can, I think, as a local government, we've always done this and we will always do it in this way. But if you can, I guess, introduce the philosophy or the foundation of transformational, a transformational focus, some of those transactional things can be done effectively, efficiently.
And one of the things that we're seeing is that AI is going to help, because there's a lot of that transactional stuff that could potentially use some sort of artificial intelligence to help with. How do you incorporate, what's your thinking on how you can leverage artificial intelligence into a sector that's traditionally kind of held that stuff at bay?
I think we need to embrace it. It's here to stay. It's going to make our lives easier. I when I've spoken with staff about it, who in Carnarvon, we spoke about introducing AI, but giving people the skills to use it effectively and effectively, but also thoughtfully and in the right applications.
Yes.
Using it appropriately. There was some stuff I said, absolutely, no, it's going to...
Don't bring it near me.
No, it'll make us all, stupid.
Robots.
We don't, So, there are definitely people who will resist it. But I think we can harnessing it and using it to our advantage.
Yeah.
So how do we do that? There are so many things, as you said, that are really interesting. I've just had a thought to when we introduced, so this is going back in my career, going back 25 years, introduced self-check in the library. So introducing self-check.
Yeah.
And staff feeling really challenged by that and disempowered. And
I haven't got a job anymore.
This is what anyway. Yeah. And I think the conversation I had with the team at that time was, your value comes not from the transaction.
Yeah, the transaction.
Okay, so if that can be done by something else, that can be done in some other way. Now, how can we use all this incredible intelligence and skill and experience and knowledge that you have in
the transformational side rather than the
How can this add value? Yeah. So you can be helping people in a way that the machine can't.
Yeah.
So let the machine do the stuff that it can do, and then you add value.
Yeah.
And bring your intelligence
into that.
Yeah.
Because I've just spent a bit of time in London, and seeing some of the cool AI coming out of Europe is just, and I think, Australia's fairly well behind in incorporating it. There's things like drone usage in regional areas. There's things like automated lawnmowers. Besides, the standard ChatGPT, which people are starting to use, there's so many different avenues that could make your lives so much easier in local government.
It's very interesting. You think of farming as a fairly traditional practice and farmers as being fairly conservative. They've been using this technology for quite some time with their with
harvesting
and their seeding. The technology's there. We need to embrace it, and each time we embrace a technology that helps us do our work more efficiently, we've got more time to do something
else
that actually is more creative and adds value. I think.
And particularly, in local government where you're trying to add value for the community. If you can get rid of some of the transactional stuff that annoys the community, then you can actually add more value, whether it's in economic development or whether it's in looking after the community's focus on looking after the environment. It doesn't matter what, you've got more capacity for that. And I think we're going to be forced into it anyway. So we might as well embrace
it and harness it and use it to our advantage.
And truly transformational leaders are always looking at the external environment to see what can we actually leverage. That's part of good leadership. When we look at leadership in the sector, we know that traditionally CEOs in the sector have been under a massive amount of pressure. They've also had the highest levels of challenges from burnout. Taking care of themselves seems to be a challenge because you're quite isolated often particularly the regional areas. It seems to be a high risk from a well-being perspective for a CEO. Certainly local government professionals have done some research with UWA around this issue. How do you as a leader make sure that you take care of yourself in that very, I guess, isolated role?
Okay, so I have got wonderful support mechanisms, like yourself, Lynda, colleagues in the sector who I know are there, who will have your back.
Go to
I can ring at any time, ask, even if it's just to get some support.
Just on a bad day.
Just having a bad day and feeling overwhelmed. And there are so many who will stop everything to make sure you're okay. And of course, at home, my husband is, an incredible support. And my dog.
Very important. Our dogs are very important to us. Yeah.
She just
they love you unconditionally.
And life is so simple, when you just take your dog for a walk.
Yeah.
So look, I think the other thing is the relationship you have with the Shire president as the CEO.
Yeah.
So making sure that relationship is solid.
Yeah.
Because you need
that is the single biggest pressure when it goes wrong. Yeah. And no one else is going except the CEO when that relationship goes wrong. Yeah.
So working at that relationship and making sure that even though you may disagree, that again, you might disagree on an issue, but maintaining that relationship.
Yeah. So for you, it's that focus on the relationships, both your support relationships and the important key stakeholder relationships internally with your president, mayor. But for you, it's having those mentors or whatever you call them, just someone you can call, get support when you need it, but also having a home environment where you can go home and be supported by your dog and your husband. And super important.
That is really important. And maybe taking yourself out of the environment from time to time. So for me, some of that is just, going camping, but
going back to nature.
Going back to nature. Usually not in the same district that you're working, because then I can't switch off.
Yeah.
And I've found that
because you're bumping
into people, or you're looking at the road that needs greening, or the signs that are falling apart, or whatever, weeding that needs to be done. Yeah. So taking yourself, I know that really struck me when I was in Carnarvon, and I went down to Shire Bay for the first time after, I think we'd been in Carnarvon for about 12 months, and finally managed to have a few days off and went down to Shire Bay and went for a walk on the beach, and found I so enjoyed it because I didn't look at what needed doing. I could just enjoy walking on the beach.
Not worrying that there's stuff.
That's right. There's a bit of erosion there. How are we going to manage that erosion, or whatever it is? Yeah. So there's that.
So being able to kind of separate from the work environment. You are a hard worker, though. You put a lot of effort into your work, emotionally and time-wise,
physically, emotionally.
But it's about that ability to withdraw when you know you need to, and get some almost disconnection from the community that you're working in.
And the environment in which you're working. And look, I'm not great at it, so I'm not, I wouldn't hold myself up as a role model for doing that well at all. I give 100%. When I'm on the job, I'm 100% there. And it's my waking, from the moment I wake to the moment I go to bed. It's in my head. The job is in my head. But that's okay. I I love what I do, so that makes it easier.
And that's a key, that passion for what you do. I always say, if you're passionate about what you do, it never feels like work. So for you,
there's a joy I can't explain that comes from. It's satisfaction. It's something, I don't know what the word is, but while it's all consuming, it's also so incredibly so fundamental to who I am.
And rewarding.
Incredibly rewarding. So I love it. I'm passionate about it, but I do recognise that sometimes you just need to step back a little bit and
it's interesting.
Enjoy life.
Yeah, and it's interesting though, one of the longest running pieces of research that's been running for 75 years, and it's successive researchers have continued it. The two most important things from that have come from that around life satisfaction is, the first one is having good connection, which you've talked about a lot, that connection, people you can go to, people you can ring up whenever you want. And the second one is having purpose, which is that passion. I think purpose and passion, for me, purpose and passion are kind of interwoven.
Absolutely. I think having... And knowing you're making a difference, knowing you're contributing, knowing that your work actually has some meaning. It's so important. I love it. So I feel incredibly privileged to have had the opportunity now to be a CEO and as an executive in Geraldton. So for many years, having had the privilege of leading teams and working with some incredible people.
And leading communities. You really are leading communities in the CEO role. It's not, you've got an internal focus, but you've also got a very strong external focus with the role of CEO. It's actually quite a complex role because often CEOs in other organizations are much more internally focused, whereas your role is to go out to the community and find what they want.
Be accessible to the community and show your, demonstrate your commitment to the community.
So in your years of leading and being a leader, if you were kind of mentoring a younger leader coming up through the sector, what would some advice be that you would give to them to say, this is really what you need to focus on as you take your journey through local government?
Okay. I've been in the position where I've actually provided some, advice, I suppose, to quite a few aspiring leaders, young leaders, and mostly all women. It's mostly all women who I've had that opportunity to have those sorts of conversations with. So one that comes to mind was very specifically for this young woman, is that every opportunity is an opportunity to learn and grow. So, she was at a very early stage in her career, and she thought some work was sort of beneath her, or she wasn't getting anything from it. She was wasting her time doing this particular thing. And I said, every opportunity is an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to shine. Even if it is quite a menial or mundane task, shine at it. Show yourself and the world that you can do it 100%. So
put your whole heart into whatever it is. Great advice.
Do it well. Do it well. And and nothing is it's not a waste of time. It's not a waste of your time. Do it and do it well. I guess another woman, she was in a more senior position, and quite a strong leader, great leader, but forgot about the human side of the people she worked with. Yeah. So remember that the people you're working with, they're all humans. They have needs, they have pressures, they have aspirations, and
they have challenges.
Try and understand what that is. That doesn't mean, you excuse bad behaviour, but sort of remember to be empathetic as well. As a leader, I think.
And empathy is a huge one, when we look at the world that we're living in with mental health issues being so high, with the Gen Zs are coming in, 42% of them have already been diagnosed with some sort of mental health or neurodivergence. So that ability to have empathy for people who've maybe got different challenges is huge.
Yeah.
So great advice.
Yeah, but being clear on your expectations as well. So getting that's, that is a tricky balance. Yeah. I suppose the other one, and I know you've done a lot of work on this, so I speak, very much as a lay person around resilience, but for me, it's more about respecting yourself in a way that, and this is, I offer the advice, I'm not so sure I'm great at living it, but not letting other people's opinions of you impact you, if you like.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
hurt you.
Hurt you.
Yeah.
So if people won't always agree with you,
and they won't always like you.
People will, for whatever reason, that happens. But not to take that to heart.
Not take that personally.
And
that's quite a harsh sector. If we look across the state at the moment, there's quite a lot of harsh criticism of administration teams around what they're not doing.
Absolutely.
And if you take that to heart, that'd be really hard.
And I think too, the further up the ladder you get in the world, the more people there are who would like to tell you how to do your job.
Yes.
You've done it wrong. So trying.
Everyone has a view.
And as you said earlier, the role, particularly the role of a CEO, is quite public. So
very,
the criticism can be quite public, but not letting that define who your opinion of yourself. Yeah. I've always worked on principle. There are a number of people in my life whose opinion I really respect. So my mother, when she was alive, her opinion was very important to me. Yeah. And my daughters, their opinion of me is very important to me. So my husband, my husband's a tricky one because whatever I do, he thinks I'm right.
That's good.
He's always on my side, like 100%.
Well, that's good.
It is great. But, so there are
some important
people and, provided they respect you.
Yeah.
I mean, they love that, my daughters love me, but they also respect me, and that's really important.
Yeah.
So keeping that in mind.
And keeping that balance. Yeah. So what I'm hearing, the advice you'd give younger people is really, take every opportunity to just and grab it with both hands, even if it seems quite menial and low level. Don't get highfalutin about what you take on. The second is really have empathy for other people and really understand the people aspect of what you're doing as a leader. And the third is to take care of your resilience, but in a way that is not taking personally how people will treat you, because not everyone's going to like you, especially as a CEO. They're not going to always approve of your decisions. So being able to actually process that in a healthy way, but having the people around you whose views you do trust, because you do need to take feedback as a leader, but it's taking feedback from people whose views you value.
You trust them to give you genuinely, honest feedback. And when you need to be told, well, maybe you could have learned from that. How can you learn from that? Because perhaps, there were other options. So taking that feedback. I've actually, an interesting one, when I was leaving Carnarvon, my last evening there, a car pulled up, big hurry, out the front of our house. We were out the front doing some final packing, and there was someone who had left the organisation, under probably less desirable circumstances. He'd left. He came to say goodbye and to say thank you. And at the time that he'd left the organisation, I was probably his least favourite person in the world. But he had either reflected, I don't know what had happened, but he came to actually wish me well and thank me for the, how it had
landed. That you
panned out.
That's an incredible accolade to you as a leader.
And I suppose where I'm going with that is people may not like you at the time,
might not like your decision,
But if you act with integrity, I guess.
Integrity, authenticity, and humility.
That may be, maybe fleeting. So don't dwell on, I guess, don't dwell on that. Begin that someone may not like you at the time, may not like your decision, because the world moves, people move with it. So,
and as leaders, we are called to make tough decisions. That's part of our job. But if you can make a tough decision with authenticity, with empathy, and with a level of humility, I think that's what I see in your leadership, is that humility that comes with it, that actually then someone walks away and goes, actually, no, I was wrong in this, and Andrea was right. So that's an incredible accolade. I have, by the way, watched the video that your people have made from Carnarvon. That's amazing.
I haven't actually seen it.
Wonderful accolade to you as a leader from your people. I don't think I've ever seen that in local government ever in the years that I've been working across local government. So real great accolade to you as a leader, and you should take that as a great exit from Carnarvon and a great start for you in Margaret River. So you need to look at it.
How lovely. It was, they showed it to me the day I left. They sent it around the organisation, but they said they'd be putting it up on LinkedIn, but I haven't been able to get my new phone to connect up to LinkedIn, so it's really frustrating.
I think it only landed on the weekend because I watched it on the weekend. It's a delightful accolade to you as a leader. So,
I had a beautiful. I've got some beautiful memories from organisations. When I left Geraldton, they gave me a book, and it was messages from all the team, across the organisation. So sometimes when I'm feeling a bit low, I can read that. And I have another thing which is so funny. It's a letter, or it's the speech read out at my farewell in Cocos. It's so funny because at one point they said, now they said all these lovely things, and then it was, now we don't want you thinking you're perfect or anything, because sometimes you made us very grumpy. With your high I'm paraphrasing now, but basically, that's right, no, it was with your bossy ways.
Lovely.
I got that. I should get it framed.
Yeah. So in summary, I think that what you bring to the sector is fantastic. You bring that new wave of leadership, which is around authenticity, around that ability to really encompass transformational leadership. And I know you're going to do an amazing job in Margaret River, but it's been a delight to have you on. And I wish you all the best as you go forward in your leadership journey. And thank you for all the guidance you've given to leaders coming up through the sector and in other sectors, because I think local government has a lot to show to other sectors as well. So thank you for your time. It's been delightful.
My absolute pleasure, Lynda, and thank you so much for this opportunity, but for your amazing support and guidance over the years.
Pleasure. Thank you.